Recently, in the heart of an ancient city near Alexandria, an event occurred that will undoubtedly revolutionize our understanding of ancient history and archaeological discoveries. Forget the usual finds we are accustomed to seeing in museums and textbooks. Now a new chapter, full of mysteries and incredible discoveries, has opened up for scientists and researchers. At the center of this attention is the ancient Temple of Taposiris, known for its rich history and mysterious aura. Thanks to long and persistent excavations, it has now witnessed something that could change the understanding of the entire world. This is not just another entrance to ruins or a monument of bygone eras. It is essentially the key to one of the most intricate mysteries of antiquity. Scientists are confident that they have discovered something unique, something that could become the most important find in the history of Egypt. The tomb of Cleopatra VII herself, the last queen of Egypt, and possibly the most powerful and vibrant figure of her era. For over 2,000 years, this secret remained hidden, shrouded in a fog of mysteries and speculations, evoking genuine admiration and numerous questions from historians and archaeologists. And now, after decades of searching, efforts, research, and failures, it seems that the solution is near. But with each new layer removed from the ancient walls, more troubling thoughts arise. What lies inside evokes not only admiration, but also serious concern, as scientists are faced with not only ancient secrets, but also dangers that could have global consequences. We face a difficult choice: to uncover or leave everything as it is, for inside there may be not only ancient relics, but also materials containing ancient toxins, as well as inexplicable biological anomalies. All this suggests that the burial site may not just be a tomb, but a true time capsule, containing something that categorically should not have been discovered under any circumstances. Scientists have already entered the first chamber, which, according to them, completely changed the understanding of ancient Egyptian architecture. However, what they saw next shook the entire scientific world to its core. For more than 2,000 years, the final resting place of Queen Cleopatra, the last of the powerful Ptolemaic dynasty, remained one of the most enigmatic and unsolved mysteries of history. These two legendary figures, the queen herself and her tragic lover, the Roman general Mark Antony, have forever entered history as symbols of romance, power, and tragedy. Their story, their love, and their subsequent demise forever changed the destinies of entire nations and empires. They disappeared from the world stage in 30 BC, leaving behind only legends and esoteric knowledge. Their death marked the end of an era, signifying the conclusion of Ptolemaic rule and the loss of Egypt's independence, which fell under Roman control. In ancient chronicles, such as those by Plutarch and Suetonius, written decades after the events, it was detailed that Mark Antony, struck and hopelessly wounded, fell on his own sword, while Cleopatra, according to legend, met her end by the bite of a venomous snake, an asp, an ancient symbol of pharaonic power. The two were buried together in a tomb that was meant to match their royal status, being splendid and majestic. However, the most astonishing and disappointing fact is that the exact location of this tomb remains unknown. According to historical sources, the right to burial was granted by the Roman rulers themselves, primarily Octavian, the future Emperor Augustus. It is presumed that the tomb was either near the Temple of Isis, the goddess of magic, motherhood, and protection, or directly within it, as Cleopatra was considered the living embodiment of this deity. This famous city, founded by the will of the great Alexander the Great, was one of the most vibrant and lively centers of ancient culture, knowledge, and political intrigue. Its history is rich with events that have left an indelible mark on human memory. At the center of this ancient civilization stood the palace belonging to Queen Cleopatra, proudly rising on the island of Antirodos, located in the bay known as the harbor. This magnificent palace was surrounded by temples, sacred places of worship, and the famous Library of Alexandria, which attracted scholars from all over the world. The majestic structures, wealth, and cultural heritage made the city one of the brightest oases of antiquity. However, over time, under the onslaught of powerful natural forces, the city began to slowly disappear. Centuries of natural disasters, destructive earthquakes, massive tsunamis, and the constant encroachment of the Mediterranean Sea gradually consumed its parts. These calamities literally swept away entire quarters, leaving only dark traces in history. Significant sections of the city, its royal palaces, and many secrets buried under layers of sand and salty water were swallowed by the ocean, vanishing from sight forever. This gradual submersion erased many memorable places from the face of the earth, and the traces of Cleopatra's reign, her luxurious palaces, and the supposed site of her final resting place seemed to dissolve into the depths of the sea. For many generations, the queen's tomb became more of a legend than a confirmed archaeological site. It was imagined as a ghostly whisper passed down through ancient texts and myths, creating a mystical aura around this enigmatic place. Every lost stone, every inscription destroyed or buried under the sands, left only a faint but alluring reminder of the past. Among these few artifacts, coins bearing Cleopatra's likeness, shattered statues, fragments of architectural elements, were only a small part of what once adorned this city and testified to its former grandeur. For centuries, countless explorers, historians, and treasure hunters have attempted to find the remains of this last great monument. Yet despite all efforts, no sarcophagus, definitive inscriptions, or the burial chamber itself have been discovered. The eternal resting place of the Queen of the Nile remained hidden behind the veil of the sea and time, and its existence was in question. In recent years, however, thanks to new advances in science and technology, a new hope has emerged. Modern underwater exploration methods such as sonar mapping, core sampling from seabed deposits, and contemporary archaeological excavations promise to tear apart this ancient veil and help find answers to questions that have intrigued people for centuries. After many years of painstaking work and research, there was a sense that we were getting closer to solving the mystery. More and more often, signs from the depths of the Mediterranean Sea stimulated hope that the tomb might be much closer than previously thought. The search for Cleopatra's tomb is an epic story filled with false leads, vanished landmarks, and the destructive impact of natural forces on human memory. Throughout antiquity and in subsequent centuries, people, soldiers, scholars, and explorers set out in search of this enigmatic place, but all their attempts proved unsuccessful. Each expedition only complicated the task, adding new layers of complexity to an already tangled history. Initially, the main focus was on the island of Antirodos, where Cleopatra's luxurious palace once stood, offering magnificent views of the harbor and surrounding waters. However, this island, like much else, was doomed. Over many centuries, it slowly sank beneath the sea waves by about 16 feet, and its remnants were hidden under a thick layer of silt and marine sediment. Using the most advanced underwater exploration methods, such as cutting-edge diving techniques and the latest geophysical surveys, the team led by Gaudio was able to discover truly astonishing objects on the Mediterranean seabed. Among them were enormous stone columns, skillfully and meticulously carved, as if meant to support something very important, as well as statues crafted with high artistry, impressive in their detail and grandeur. During these underwater excavations, a vast number of artifacts were found, among which coins adorned with the images of rulers from the Ptolemaic era stood out. These findings opened a window into the past, allowing researchers to trace what once stood at the site of the sunken ruins, a part of Cleopatra's palace complex in the sacred Temple of Isis. This temple was not just a religious center, but a crucial place of worship, holding immense significance for the queen's reign and her image as a living goddess, revered and worshipped by the people. Once, these ruins, engulfed by the waves of the Mediterranean Sea, eloquently spoke of the former splendor and wealth of the last dynasty that ruled Egypt independently, without external interference. However, despite advances in studying these underwater monuments, the search for Cleopatra's tomb remained fruitless. No burial shafts or chambers where her sepulchre might be hidden were found in the submerged palace complex. It became evident that her final resting place was not among these underwater ruins, but likely located elsewhere, on land or nearby. Scientists then shifted their focus to other possible locations, ruined temples and necropolises scattered beyond the modern boundaries of the city of Alexandria. These ancient burial sites, though heavily damaged by time and urbanization, still held important clues about the reign of the Egyptian dynasty that ruled here many centuries ago. Researchers turning to manuscripts by Greek and Roman authors, such as Diodorus Siculus and Strabo, found hints in their writings that could suggest the tomb's location. Their descriptions contain vaguely formulated, yet enticing indications that it might be near a temple complex located west of Alexandria. There, strong cult worship still persisted, and there were speculations that the secret of her final resting place was hidden in this area. Maps created in different eras posed another challenge for archaeologists. Over the centuries, they were redrawn, key locations renamed, and natural changes, such as shifts in shorelines and geological processes, complicated the task of determining the exact location of the sought-after objects. The lack of clear and contemporary data on Cleopatra's burial site made the search akin to assembling a complex puzzle from disparate, sometimes contradictory fragments. Like the queen herself, whose fate was full of enigmas, disappearances, and myths, the location of her burial was scattered across various stories and archaeological finds. Nevertheless, with each new technological advancement, with each new expedition, the chances of success grew higher. The growing confidence that traces of the last pharaoh might be discovered not only in myths or stone monuments, but in real places strengthened with each passing year. The discovery of underwater temples and sanctuaries was just the beginning. In the course of further research and excavations on land, new findings began to emerge. Fragments of statues, ancient inscriptions, architectural details, all increasingly hinting that the answer lay nearby, in the earthly layers among the waves and sand. The name of this place is Taposiris Magna, which translates as the Great. Despite the grandeur and elegance of its massive columns, as well as the richness of intricate reliefs that praise the divine power of Osiris, the eternal ruler of the world of the dead, Taposiris Magna long remained in the shadow of scientific interest and archaeological research. For decades, scholars primarily viewed this place as a sacred zone intended for conducting religious rituals and worshiping deities, rather than as a tomb for kings. In the historical tradition of Egypt, monarchs were usually buried in majestic sepulchres, such as the famous Valley of the Kings, or in lavish pyramids erected far from temple complexes to emphasize their special status and separation from everyday life. The very repository of the gods, the temples, served as sacred places where the most important religious ceremonies took place. Their sanctuaries, guarded by priests and shrouded in rich mythology, were rarely used for human burial. Typically, these shrines were filled with ritual utensils, statues, and symbols, rather than the remains of rulers. It was for this reason that the idea that Cleopatra might have found her final resting place beneath Taposiris Magna seemed unlikely and even improbable to most scholars. This enigmatic area remained virtually unnoticed by archaeologists for many years, until a new hypothesis emerged, capable of altering the established view of its purpose. This hypothesis was proposed by Dominican archaeologist Dr. Kathleen Martinez. She decided to challenge the prevailing opinion based on the close interconnection between mythology, symbolism, and historical monuments. Martinez suggested that the site is associated with ancient cults centered around the goddess Isis and the cult figure of Seti, the goddess associated with resurrection and divine governance. Ancient texts state that Isis, in her quest to resurrect her husband Osiris after his murder by Set, hid his body in a secret tomb to ensure his return to life in the afterlife. In Egyptian culture, these myths of resurrection and divine power played an important role, linking death with eternity and divine immortality. Cleopatra, who was often depicted as the living embodiment of the goddess Seti, might have had this myth in mind when choosing the location of her final tomb, so that it would remind of divine death and immortality. Thus, she could intentionally connect her fate with legends that blur the boundaries between mortal death and divine immortality, making the place of her burial sacred and filled with deep symbolism. Martinez's work began in 2005 when she embarked on meticulous excavations beneath the temple complex. Over many seasons, her team discovered a complex network of underground labyrinths hidden beneath the surface ruins and crumbling walls. Among the discoveries were burial chambers filled with various artifacts, statues of rulers from the Ptolemaic era, and an astonishing number of coins bearing Cleopatra's image, all of which attested to the close connection of this place with the last Egyptian queen. These findings sparked a storm of interest and excitement among scholars, yet they also brought disappointment, as the sought-after chamber where Cleopatra herself might be buried remained inaccessible and shrouded in centuries of mystery. For many years, local legends whispered of curses, divine protection, and mysterious forces guarding the rest of the last queen. The stones of the ancient temple, scarred by time, bore witness to numerous looting, earthquakes, and natural destruction that relentlessly erased traces of former magnificence. And yet, despite the destruction and numerous obstacles, beneath this, the design of this tunnel left scientists and researchers awestruck with its precise resemblance to ancient Greek aqueducts. Long, graceful arched channels that were used in antiquity to transport water over great distances with astonishing efficiency and precision. These structures, built centuries ago, served not only technical purposes, but often had deep symbolic meaning, linking water and life with divine aspects. Similarly, this tunnel, whose purpose remained a mystery, raised many questions. Was it a secret route for ceremonial processions? A hidden aqueduct meant to supply cities with water? Or did it serve a more important protective function, acting as a corridor guarding something sacred and valuable underground? The construction of this enigmatic structure was dated to approximately the same period as the surrounding temples and other cult objects. This indicated its importance, and that it was part of not just an infrastructural complex, but an entire ritual and sacred space. The architecture of the tunnel was a true engineering and spiritual marvel, created to protect what lay underground, possibly sacred relics or secret knowledge. This entire complex was likely part of a sophisticated system of rituals related to the worship and protection of sacred symbols. However, the exploration of this tunnel was fraught with serious dangers. The further the team advanced inside, the more apparent it became that its structure was not as stable as it seemed at first glance. In some sections, underground waters had seeped in, partially flooding the corridors, creating additional obstacles for progress. The tunnel walls, covered with a layer of centuries-old dust and rust, showed signs of decay and instability. As a result of tectonic shifts over the centuries, the structure had been weakened. Its cracks and weak points became increasingly apparent. The fear of collapse hung in the air like a shadow over each step of the explorers. Despite these dangers, the desire to unravel the mystery and discover new knowledge was stronger than fear. And that is why the archaeologists continued to move forward, ignoring the growing risks. At the end of the tunnel, the team encountered a sealed chamber, the entrance to which was marked by scorched stone, as if a fierce fire had raged inside, leaving traces of intense flames or an explosion. The atmosphere inside changed abruptly. The air became heavy, still, filled with a sense of mystery and ancient secrets. Electronic devices began to malfunction, showing signs of failure, and the light seemed dim and flickering, as if trying to penetrate through the thickness of centuries. These signs indicated the age of this place, as well as its mysterious nature, perhaps suggesting that something very important and significant was hidden behind the walls. Understanding the danger of the situation and caring for the safety of their team, the researchers made the difficult decision to temporarily halt further attempts to penetrate inside until safer methods of opening the chamber could be developed. At that moment, the entire scientific and archaeological world was literally frozen in anticipation. What could this sealed chamber contain? Could it hold something that would connect to the last refuge of Cleopatra and Mark Antony, hidden for more than 2 millennia? Or perhaps it was a crypt holding ancient secrets related to the god Osiris, with his myths of death and resurrection, of the transformation of the soul in the afterlife. Questions about the contents of this place haunted the scientists, and the pressure on them was growing, from the scientific community, global media, and local authorities. This temple, forgotten by ancestors and shrouded in centuries of mystery, was on the verge of revealing its long-hidden truth. What the scientists might discover inside could shake the entire world. Excavations revealed a symbol that in ancient Egyptian mythology was considered an unmistakable sign of eternal life and divine protection. The carefully crafted details carved on the scarab spoke of the craftsmanship of skilled artisans, likely those who created it for a person of particularly high status. Such an item was not a mere decoration or amulet. It bore deep sacred meaning, serving as a symbol of hope for immortality and divine protection. Scattered around it were coins, many of which featured the recognizable profile of Cleopatra herself, a woman with sharp, expressive facial features, captured in an artful blend of Greek and Egyptian styles. These coins were not just currency. They were more like political statements and reminders of her reign, of the complex intersections of cultures that occurred during the Ptolemaic dynasty. They testified to power, cultural integration, and how one people adopted and transformed the traditions of another. At the center of attention were statues of Ptolemy Soter, Cleopatra's father, crafted with exceptional precision to emphasize his power and divine lineage. These statues stood motionless, as if guarding the space, reminding of the power and spiritual support of the ruling dynasty. However, it was the inscriptions on the stone surfaces that raised the most questions among researchers. The repeatedly carved name of Osiris, the god of rebirth and eternal protection, appeared alongside phrases invoking rebirth and preservation of life. These texts seemed like spells or mantras intended to strengthen power and protection. In one part of the chamber, partially ruined by time, two sarcophagi could still be seen lying side by side. Their surfaces were smoothed by centuries, making their identities almost indistinguishable, hidden behind layers of time. However, the precise placement of the sarcophagi suggested intentionality, likely for two interconnected individuals resting together. Next to them, on a weathered stone slab, was an enigmatic inscription: "She who walks with Isis and he who fell by the blade." It contained neither royal cartouches nor explicit names, only a haunting hint at intertwined fates, a queen and a warrior, lovers or enemies, linked beyond the mortal realm. This inscription remained a mystery, as if concealing a secret yet to be uncovered. But the corridor where the chamber was located whispered its secrets, extending far beyond the stone walls and burial artifacts. Suddenly, faint yet distinctly perceptible rhythmic pulsations began to register, like the heartbeat of the earth itself, emanating from the depths of the sealed chamber. These vibrations were not random. They followed a specific pattern that puzzled both geologists and engineers. Could it be natural tectonic activity, or was something deliberately preserved beneath the layers of time, something meant to remain hidden? The air in the corridor grew increasingly tense, as if the earth itself was whispering warnings in a language lost to time. Each new tremor evoked a sense of anxiety and awe among the researchers, as if some inevitable resolution was approaching. The corridor of Osiris ceased to be merely an archaeological find. It transformed into a mystery shrouded in prophecy, yet to be deciphered. The walls of this tunnel held evidence of ancient history, partially destroyed and almost erased by the relentless passage of time. Symbols were etched into them, barely discernible yet still readable, both Greek and Egyptian. These inscriptions spoke of a complex cultural fusion, of the Ptolemies' attempts to unite in their rituals and symbols the traditions of two great peoples. The smooth, almost polished surface of the black stone softly reflected the flickering torchlight, creating the impression that the scene was enveloped in a light, ghostly mist. In the dark smoothness of this monument lay a mystery, lending the entire place a certain mystique and invisible presence. Beneath the figures carved or engraved in stone lay an ominous message, a message that combined Greek letters and hieroglyphic signs, creating an unusual and unsettling combination. It had a sound that was not only poetic, but also chilling, as if a warning directed at those who dared to approach. It read, "Disturb not the lovers who sleep in silence. Their bond is the balance that preserves the universe." These words seem both beautiful and terrifying, as if a reminder that the inhabitants of this tomb were not merely mortals. They were perceived as guardians of cosmic order, sentinels whose union maintained the delicate harmony between life and death. The meaning of this message became a topic of discussion among the team of archaeologists. Was it a symbolic request from priests to future generations, a caution or a literal warning to potential looters and intruders who might disturb the ancient peace? Soon after, near the entrance to the chamber, archaeologists discovered a small golden plaque. Its edges were melted and deformed, as if subjected to intense heat, possibly fire or a volcanic eruption that occurred in the distant past. The inscriptions on the plaque were remarkably clear and distinct. It bore names: Cleopatra, Thea, Philippat, and Mark Antony. Unlike the Egyptian hieroglyphs, these names were written in Latin and ancient Greek script, indicating the presence of Roman cultural elements. Such a bilingual artifact suggested that the tomb itself served not only as a resting place for the Ptolemies, but also represented a monument completed or consecrated during the Roman period. It hinted at a profound political and personal alliance between the legendary Queen of Egypt and the powerful Roman general and politician, Mark Antony, figures whose fates had long captivated the minds of both historians and romantics. Behind this golden plaque stood the final barrier, a formidable wall made of granite and lead, fused together so skillfully that it seemed to have been crafted by an ancient master in the fire of a volcano or under its fierce onslaught. The technology of this barrier's construction was astonishing in its complexity and craftsmanship, unmatched by any previously encountered examples in Egyptian tombs. Its design combined metallurgical and stonework techniques, challenging contemporary understanding of ancient technologies. The decision to breach this barrier was no longer merely an archaeological question. It became a delicate political, religious, and ethical issue. While discussions were ongoing, the area around the tomb was quickly cordoned off. Armed forces with modern technology and authority arrived on the scene, underscoring the gravity of the situation. The world watched, wondering, what lay hidden behind the final seal? Is this the resting place of two legendary figures, or does it conceal something far more enigmatic and dangerous? The sealed chamber was hidden beneath layers of limestone and centuries-old deposits, and its existence was only confirmed through modern methods. Ground-penetrating radar and invisible thermal anomalies detected by satellite scans. When the team finally breached the entrance, the air was filled with the anticipation of discovering something extraordinary, but nothing could have prepared them for what awaited inside. Its surface was strikingly smooth and impeccably uniform. It seemed to have been crafted using technologies far superior to the ancient crafts and skills known to man. This surface bore no traces of seams or defects, as if created by high-precision mechanisms capable of ensuring absolute smoothness and integrity. When expert specialists took material samples for spectroscopic analysis, it was revealed that the granite contained an unusually high concentration of trace elements such as titanium and magnetite. These elements are rare in Egyptian quarries, leading scientists to speculate that the stone might have been quarried in a volcanic region hundreds of miles away, where natural processes could have produced such a unique mineral blend. Even more mysterious was the heat, barely detectable and almost imperceptible to the touch, emanating from the sarcophagus. It was not noticeable upon contact, but it was captured by sensitive thermal cameras capable of detecting even the slightest temperature fluctuations. The ambient temperature in the room remained stable, about 22 degrees Celsius, yet the sarcophagus consistently registered a temperature of around 29 degrees, maintaining this warmth for several days, defying natural laws and raising serious questions. Air samples taken from inside the chamber revealed abnormal concentrations of paramercury, a substance whose levels significantly exceeded those typical of ordinary archaeological finds. Mercury was also found in the air, known since ancient times for its preservative and mystical properties. Its presence in such quantities was highly unusual. Equally surprising were trace amounts of arsenic and cinnabar, substances associated with alchemical practices and embalming, which were considered lost or held symbolic significance. This suggested ritual preservation methods that might have been used in antiquity and about which modern Egyptology might not be fully aware. The soil surrounding the sarcophagus also provided its own evidence. It was saturated with lead and contained elevated levels of selenium. These findings suggested that the burial site might have been deliberately sealed with toxic minerals, possibly to prevent decomposition or deter intruders. Inside the sarcophagus were two mummified human figures, remarkably well preserved despite the millennia that had passed. Anthropologists noted that one of the skeletons had distinct features, characteristic of Greco-Egyptian cultures: an elongated skull, which corresponded to the elite practices of women from the Ptolemaic court circles. Radiocarbon dating indicated that this mummy died around 30 years before the Common Era, coinciding with the historical period when Cleopatra vanished. The other skeleton was male, robustly built, with pronounced Roman facial features, a strong jaw, high nose, and a date very close to the first find. Between the two mummies lay a bronze cylinder, though rusted, still intact. It was inlaid with rare minerals typically found at volcanic sources along the southern Mediterranean coast of Italy. The cylinder was tightly sealed, with no visible openings or hinges. Early X-rays revealed faint, irregular organic shapes inside, subtly shifting and changing configuration over several hours. This artifact was immediately transported to a specially equipped laboratory in Cairo, where in-depth investigations began using modern methods, MRI and neutron scans. The data obtained challenged conventional explanations. Inside the cylinder, there was subtle internal movement, temperature fluctuations, and unpredictable electromagnetic emissions. Global speculation and conjecture flared instantly, like a raging fire engulfing the entire planet. The ancient relic became the focus of attention, potentially belonging to Cleopatra or a Roman consul, or perhaps a mythical find made tangible, or possibly something else entirely, long beyond the bounds of conventional understanding. Some speculated it was an ancient biological archive, hidden for centuries in the depths of time. The excavation that uncovered this enigmatic find was to remain strictly confidential, as it involved Egyptian archaeology, a cultural heritage guarded with particular caution and kept under tight security. However, despite all precautions, internal information leaks began to spread rapidly, causing increasing concern among specialists and scientific circles. These leaks were fueled by alarming medical reports from the excavation team. Some researchers reported persistent respiratory symptoms, dry cough, headaches, and severe fatigue, baffling even the most experienced doctors and medical professionals. Soon, biological analyses followed, revealing the presence of unusual bacterial spores in air samples taken directly from inside the sarcophagus in the surrounding chamber. These spores belonged to unknown strains of extremophilic bacteria, microorganisms capable of surviving in conditions that seemed insurmountable for most living beings. They could exist in an oxygen-free environment with a high concentration of mercury and maintain their viability for thousands of years. The pathogens appeared to have been cut off from oxygen since their burial, existing in a state of nearly frozen metabolism, a so-called dormant state, until they were disturbed. Even more alarmingly, some of these spores demonstrated resistance to standard antibiotics, raising concerns that scientists were facing a new form of biological threat that would need to be addressed. As a result, the team working at the excavation site was immediately placed under quarantine, and the World Health Organization secretly issued a warning to the laboratories involved in the analysis. At the same time, research into the mysterious bronze cylinder found nearby intensified. Specialists recorded inexplicable irregular pulsations with motion sensors, resembling living organic matter and not corresponding to either mechanical artifacts or simple chemical reactions. Some scientists speculated that the cylinder might contain preserved biological tissues or even microbial life forms sealed in complex matrices for long-term preservation, possibly using natural antimicrobial agents such as cinnabar and mercury. The Egyptian government quickly imposed a strict quarantine at the excavation site, citing the need to preserve archaeological heritage and ensure safety. Satellite images confirmed a noticeable increase in security forces and equipment designed to suppress mobile communications to prevent possible unauthorized broadcasts and information leaks. No official statement labeled the site as a biologically hazardous area, yet there was a palpable tension within scientific and governmental circles. Secrecy protocols and containment measures heightened fears that this discovery held more than mere archaeological value. It resembled Pandora's box, containing ancient biological material that could unlock long-forgotten mysteries. Within this time capsule, frozen in a distant era, lay the possibility of awakening living organisms that had been dormant for centuries. And it was this thought that could frighten not only the scientists involved in the excavation, but the entire planet. There were no ghosts, no curses, no ancient spells. Everything uncovered underground proved far more unsettling and dangerous. Living biology, have you ever thought that there are things better left untouched, hidden deep in memory or concealed from prying eyes? Sometimes certain secrets important to us are best left alone, undisclosed, to avoid causing unnecessary suffering to ourselves or those around us. In life, there are circumstances, events, or memories that are better left in the past, where they belong so they don't interfere with our present and future. Not all mysteries need to be revealed. Not all secrets should be shared with others, as sometimes this only brings pain and disappointment. It is important to have the wisdom to know when to leave something beyond the threshold of consciousness and when, on the contrary, to share and free oneself from the burden. Sometimes it is the hidden things that help maintain inner balance and harmony, allowing us to move forward without unnecessary burdens. It happens that what seems important and significant to us loses its relevance over time or becomes merely a source of pain. Therefore, it is important to be able to distinguish the important from the insignificant, to remember that not all secrets are meant to be revealed. Ultimately, the decision to keep something secret is a manifestation of inner wisdom and maturity, the ability to value one's inner peace.